Welcome to the Grasslands case study, examining how we can maximize biodiversity on Canadian grasslands. Also, welcome to the Brookedale farm near Brandon, Manitoba, where we are today. The Brookedale farm is owned by Ducks Unlimited Canada and is operated in partnership with the Manitoba Beef and Forage Initiatives.
MBFI is a research and demonstration farm that facilitates research in the beef, cattle, and forage industry. My name is Leah and I'm a research technician here at MBFI. I carry out the on-the-ground tasks for research and demonstration projects. Write up demonstration project results, take care of herd health, manage herd grazing, and interact with producers and the public regarding what MBFI does.
I'm Charlotte Crawley and I'm an agrologist with Ducks Unlimited Canada. In my job with Ducks Unlimited, I establish new forage fields and I also manage existing grasslands to optimize waterfowl nesting habitat.
We acknowledge that Brandon is located on Treaty 2 lands, traditional homelands of the Dakota, Anishinaabe, Oji-Cree, Cree, Dene, and Métis peoples. As treaty people, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, we all have a responsibility to respect the land.
In your assignment, you were hired by Ducks Unlimited Canada to develop a conservation plan for our newly acquired piece of land. The goal was to maximize biodiversity in our grasslands.
There are 4 different habitats you need to make a plan for: tame pasture, native grassland, encroaching forest, and wetland habitat. You look at fire and grazing management techniques and consult with different people to come up with your final plan.
Now that you've finished your plan, you might be wondering how Ducks Unlimited Canada might manage the land. Leah and I are here today to show you.
We are a native grassland. In the past, Ducks Unlimited Canada preferred to use fire to manage grasslands because of how fire removes the built-up layer of overgrown vegetation and allows for new seeds to grow. But now, we prefer to set up fencing and have cattle graze so that nutrients are absorbed into the cow instead of being burned away. On native grasslands, we like to use rotational grazing as well. So that's, again, going to be moving cows from one area to the next. And we like to do that to prevent overgrazing or grazing too many times on the same plant without allowing it enough time to rest and regrow. So once we move our cows off an area, the plants can grow back up to be nice and tall like the grassland you see here. If there are any sensitive habitat areas where, let's say, sage grouse or burrowing owls are living, or if there are sensitive plants you wish to protect, such as crocuses, I might fence those areas off as well so cows don't damage nesting sites or plant material. Managing grasslands for biodiversity supports a number of plant species on the landscape as well as wildlife species. Those are the things that you would consider when making a conservation plan for native grasslands. So now we've moved to the tame pasture. In your case study, the tame pasture has been left with no grazing or fire or any kind of management and is overgrown. This pasture has been managed with grazing since 2015. It was previously managed as one big continuous piece and the cows could go wherever they wanted. Now we're managing it with rotational grazing, so we're breaking it up into smaller sections and moving the cows every day. You can see that when tame pasture hasn't been used for some time, it can get really overgrown. Here is a situation where we wouldn't want to use fire management. Using fire here could potentially damage the forage in this area. Having cows graze here will help clear some of that overgrown vegetation. We'll also be getting a lot of hoof action from the cattle. When cows walk on the land, their hooves break up the soil and dead plant material, which helps new seeds of grasses and forbs to germinate and grow. So on this side of the fence is the area the cows have been grazing since yesterday. And you can see they've opened up the canopy and trampled a lot of the forage onto the ground. So there's forage down here that they've pushed over onto the ground, and this will help form the next year's litter layer and protect the soil. These are some considerations when making a conservation plan for tame pasture.
Encroaching forests can be a challenge when it comes to conserving grasslands. Here at MBFI, you can see we have some encroaching aspen, and the cows aren't providing enough grazing pressure to keep the aspen at bay. When we talk about aspen encroachment, this is what we're looking at. So you're looking at these little trees that shoot suckers up or spread through seed in established stands of grass. And this can be very problematic when you're trying to manage because they're very, very aggressive and they can take over in a very short period of time. There's a few different ways that we can manage this. Grazing animals will keep this in check. They'll nip the leaves off of the trees and keep it from spreading. And another way to manage it is through burning. A well-timed burn in the fall would come through and it'll damage the bark on the trees and eat its way through. And then in the springtime, those plants will be damaged and it'll give a chance for some of your native species to creep back in. And those are the things you should consider when making your conservation plan for encroached forests. For our wetlands on the property, our main concern is protecting habitat and water quality. If we were to have cows grazing on the native grasslands and tame pastures surrounding these areas nearby, I would want to fence off our riparian areas. We're on the north end of the farm here, and as you can see behind me, we have a beautiful, large wetland in the background. It's very important that we protect the wetland edges from the action of cattle, and the reason for that is we want to preserve water quality, we want to protect sensitive plants around the wetland edges. To do that, we incorporate fencing systems, such as this. And by doing that, we keep the cattle where we want them. The plants that grow around a wetland are important to maintain because they can help to filter out excess nutrients and pollutants from runoff before it enters the water. This protects the overall water quality of our wetland areas. I'm going to show you guys what an off-site water system is and where we would incorporate that on a grazing system. This is a solar setup that runs to what we call an off-site water system. So the pump system and underground pipeline is all trenched from this main location and then is divvied up to each of the paddocks throughout the section of land. One of the benefits to the environment that provides is by keeping the cattle away from the water, you're preserving those sensitive barriers around the edges where a lot of native plants thrive. And then you're also ensuring that water quality stays good because they're not in there mucking it up. And those are the things you should consider when making a conservation plan for wetlands. It's important to consult with others before developing your conservation plan. If I were going to do a burn, for example, I would check with the local rural municipalities to see if there's currently a burn ban in place. I would also contact the local fire department to let them know that we're conducting a prescribed burn. I would also talk to the neighbors to let them know when the burn will happen. I would want them to know that we are going to do a burn and that we're going to be conducting it safely.
If I'm putting cattle on the land, I would want to know if there's any sensitive habitat that cows shouldn't walk on. There could be sage-grouse or burrowing owl nesting on the land, and I want to be aware of that. I would talk to Ducks Unlimited Canada or the Ministry of Environment to see if the land is supporting any endangered species.
Finally, I would talk a lot to the landowner. I want to make sure that we're on the same page about how we expect the land to be grazed. The best conservation plans are those that maximize biodiversity on the land and that have been made in partnership with the landowner. Together, we can make sure that you're leaving the land in better shape than what you found it. So what have we learned? We can improve biodiversity on our grassland ecosystems through both grazing and burn management. Fire management can be most useful to help in areas where we might have encroaching forest. This can help us to remove some of the buildup of dead plants and help to stimulate new plant growth by clearing out overgrown areas.
Grazing can also be another powerful management tool that helps to stimulate plant growth. With a proper plan, grazing can promote and stimulate new plant growth and improve biodiversity. However, if we don't manage cattle grazing with a plan, we can accidentally overgraze an area or cause damage in riparian areas. So we want to make sure we consider these in our conservation plan.
Most importantly, we want to make sure that we're creating a plan that will work best for the region and the community that we are working with. Engaging with key community members and organizations is important to ensuring a successful conservation plan. Thank you for taking the time to learn about Canada's grasslands.
We hope you enjoyed the case study and learned something new. Bye now.